Welcome back, everyone, to a special Research Corner edition. I'm Thomas Wasson, filling in for Tony Mulvey. Joining me is Joe Antoshak. And Joe, a lot of fun stuff talking about. I think we're going to be giving some previews as well coming up to some of our upcoming surveys. Joe, what's going on, sir?
Hey, Thomas, how you doing? It's good to see you. Happy to be here.
We're classing it up today because we are working on Q4 data as well. A lot of sentiment going on, especially in the trucking industry. Throwing the chart up here as well. Talk us through a little bit about what's going on in terms of what each of these groups is giving us in the data when we're asking them their thoughts as well based on the market and outlook.
Yeah, exactly. So as you mentioned earlier, these are sort of preview results for our freight sentiment indexes. If you're totally unfamiliar, basically we're asking carriers, shippers, and brokers /3PLs a series of 5 questions at the beginning of every quarter that have to do with profitability and workforce sentiment, as well as business investment sentiment for near-term and longer-term timeframes, right? Basically, we're asking them on a scale of -100 to 100, how do you rate these different things? The idea being, you get enough people giving you these numbers, you can average them into sort of segment-specific sentiment, which is what you see on this chart. And then you can take the average of those segment scores and then basically have a sort of a high-level market health reading, right? It's very simple. That just sort of tracks over time how these different groups are feeling. This quarter is an exciting one for me, just because this is the first time now that we can compare data to year-ago data. We started this in Q4 2022, and now, as you can see, we're up to Q4 2023. And you can see sort of how these trends have been changing over time. The biggest thing to note, shippers, right? They're usually pretty static. Last quarter, they were the least positive of the bunch. This quarter, they are once again the most positive, which is kind of where I'd expect them to sit. Carriers, again, not very positive. They continue to struggle this year. And this is, in fact, their second lowest score that we have registered for them.
Well, I think it's fascinating looking at that, the emotional roller coaster of carrier sentiment, because it almost feels like, since this was back to 22, we've come full circle right now in terms of the emotional output. Looking at what this may mean moving forward as well as expectations, it does feel as though shippers naturally are in a pretty favorable spot. But as we move into it, was there anything else in the data that may suggest that any clear winners, anybody we should watch for in terms of, as we're continuing to collect this data, that may give us an idea of what the temperature of the environment is going to be?
Yeah, well, so I mean, right, shippers seem like they're in a pretty positive place, at least in the sense that freight transportation is quite cheap currently, and it has been for really the entirety of the year. But they're not exuberant, at least that's sort of according to the sentiment, I think largely because there are still so many sort of macro headwinds about what the consumer is going to look like a little bit down the road. I mean, the consumer has held up throughout this year, which is really, and production has held relatively steady. So they've continued to obviously sell goods. But that's not certain, right? I mean, there are still conversations about like what is this stage that we're in? Is it going to be a soft landing as the Federal Reserve wants, or are we going to have a recession? And if we are going to have a recession, it's going to be mild. Is it going to be more severe? And so it's sort of tough for them, I think, to plan out what their production is going to look like in the next year or so. But the thing I really wanted to talk about was just that, like, the importance of these sentiment indicators and tracking them over time is that they can give, hopefully, some sort of like predictive ability as we get more data in and we understand what's driving the sentiment. So I think we have another chart available that shows trucking market specific metrics, and then how the sentiment trended over time. So this is price of diesel, and then we have our NTI.USA and NTIL. It's our spot market, dry van truckload indicators. And you can see here, so Q4, that annotation on the far left, carrier sentiment was at 487. You move into Q1 2023, what was happening? Diesel prices were falling. You had that blip at the end of 2022 where rates climb. It was starting to feel like maybe this is a turnaround. So you see carrier sentiment rise as well. And then Q2 comes around and you see this is our least, in fact, it's the only overall negative carrier score that we've gotten so far. That's when we were kind of at the depths of things. So anyway, it just sort of gives you an idea of like what is impacting these sentiment things. And as we get more data in, hopefully we can start to project out into the future where these sentiments are going to lie.
Definitely. This is some wonderful data, Joe. Thank you so much again for coming on. We're out of time, though, sir, so we'll definitely catch you again next week with Tony. But don't worry, folks. We may be done with this segment, but we're going to take a quick break and be back with more content coming up.